Most people think convenience is progress, and in many ways, it is. 50 years ago, heating food in just 2 minutes was not even normal for most households. Today, we don't even think twice about using the microwave. 30 years ago, the internet was still new to most people, but today, nearly every adult is online. And 20 years ago, smartphones were not running our lives the way that they do now. But today, most of us carry an entire world in the palm of our hands. We can order groceries without walking into a store. We can get food delivered without cooking. We can text instead of calling. We can stream church without going to church. And we can watch a 30-second clip instead of reading an entire book. And we can scroll headlines instead of studying history. And we can now ask AI a question instead of doing the work to think through the answers for ourselves. And again, I'm not saying that all of that is bad. Convenience has helped us. But here's the hard truth. What if all this convenience has not just made life easier? What if it's made us softer? What if it's made us passive? What if it has made us less resilient, less disciplined, less patient, less creative, and less capable of coping with everyday life? What if the thing we keep celebrating is also the thing that is weakening us? Because most people say they want growth, but what they really want is comfort with rewards. They want the outcome without the process. They want the blessing without the burden. They want the harvest without the labor. And they want the testimony without the test. Recently, a social media follower made a very powerful statement on one of my posts. They said, "We have been sold an ideology that we can have it all today. And the greatest source of frustration comes when people realize that there are trade-offs. You simply cannot have it all at the same time." And that's the part nobody wants to hear, because convenience has trained us to believe that life is supposed to be easy. But life was never promised to be easy. So let's get ready to discuss the hard truth. This is Hard Truth, Real Talk for Real Growth. I am your host, Janae Sasso, and today we are talking about the hard truth around convenience. We'll be right back. Before we begin today's conversation, I want to remind you of something. You are not your worst mistake. Life will test you. People will disappoint you. None of those things have the authority to define who you are. Victimhood survives in darkness. Freedom grows in truth. Let's get ready to discuss the hard truth. All right, let's get into this conversation. But let me start here. Convenience is not evil, right? I'm not against technology. I'm using it now, right? And it has multiplied my ability to speak to you today and to speak to thousands and millions of people. So I'm not against microwaves, grocery delivery, online banking, GPS, or using any of those tools to help us save time and energy. Convenience can be a blessing, and technology can reduce unnecessary burden. And innovation, it solves problems, right? But here's where we've got it twisted. Convenience was supposed to help us manage difficulty. It was never supposed to convince us that difficulty shouldn't exist. And that's the difference. A microwave can heat food faster, but it does not remove your need to eat wisely. And a car can get you somewhere faster, but it does not remove your need to know where you are going. How many have gotten wrong information from the GPS? I have. A smartphone can give you access to information, but it doesn't automatically make you wise. And AI can answer a question, but it cannot replace discernment. And so convenience can assist effort, but it cannot replace effort. And that is where our society is in trouble, I believe. We've started to believe that if something requires effort, it must be wrong, but just doesn't feel right. And if something makes us uncomfortable, it must be trauma. And if something challenges us, it must be oppression. If something corrects us, they must be hateful people. And if life just gets hard, somebody has to be the blame. And that is a dangerous way to live because suffering then becomes a source of resentment. We resent our parents, society, we resent government, we resent successful people, we resent the church, and some people even resent God. I would say a lot of people do. And so, one of the most frequent questions that I hear from non believers, atheists, or even people who are struggling with their faith is this: if God is real, why is there so much suffering in the world? Now, I understand the question, right? It's a real question, it's a heavy question. But underneath that question is often an assumption, the assumption that life should be void of suffering. And that is where the worldview begins to break down because the Bible never promised us a life void of suffering. Jesus said, in this world, you will have trouble, you will have trials and tribulations. And trials are not evidence that God is absent. Difficulty is not proof that God failed. Hardship is not proof that life is broken beyond repair. The question is not whether suffering will exist. The question is what suffering will produce in us. Will it produce bitterness, resentment, blame, or will it produce endurance, character, wisdom, compassion, and strength? That is the hard truth because convenience keeps trying to sell us a suffering free life. But scripture prepares us for an overcoming life. Those are not the same things, folks. A suffering life says nothing should challenge me. But an overcoming life says, even when I am challenged, I am not defeated. A convenience driven life says, I should never have to struggle. And an abundant life says, even in the struggle, God can develop something in me that comfort never could. And that is what we have forgotten. Now, let's talk about the bigger cultural issue here. There are people who believe we can create a perfect society here on earth, a utopian society, right? A society where suffering is engineered out of existence, a society where pain disappears, a society where outcomes are controlled, a society where wealth is redistributed and population is managed and every uncomfortable reality is supposedly fixed by policy and ideology or control. Now, let me say this clearly. The desire to reduce suffering is not wrong. We need to care for the poor. We need to care about injustice. We need to care about people that are struggling. We should care about communities that are hurting, right? But when your answer to suffering is control, dominance, manipulation, removing human responsibility, you're not creating freedom, are you? You're creating, I would argue, dependency. You're creating passivity. You're creating people who no longer know how to endure, how to build, how to think, work, overcome, or govern themselves. Folks, that's not compassion. That is bondage dressed up like help. And at the root of a lot of this thinking is the belief that life should be easy. And that if life isn't easy, then someone must have failed you. Your parents, the system, church, government, even God, right? But what if life is not supposed to be easy? What if life is supposed to develop you? What if some of the resistance you are rebuking or resisting is actually the very thing God wants to use to strengthen you? What if the inconvenience is not the enemy? What if the inconvenience is actually the training ground for the success that you desire? That is the question we need to sit with, because too much convenience, it's going to make us passive. It's going to make us lazy, lethargic, intellectually weak, emotionally fragile, and spiritually dull. And it makes us resentful when life demands something from us beyond the comforts of the day. But difficulty places a demand on skills we may not even know that we have. You don't know your strength until your strength is required. You don't know your patience until your patience is tested. And you don't know your faith until uncertainty shows up. You don't know your ability to create until you do not have every resource handed to you. That's something that I've been told. Wow, Janae, you're so resourceful. But that's because I lacked access to certain things, right? You don't even know that you're resilient until quitting becomes an option and you have to decide that you won't. So that's what makes it difficult. It reveals us, it refines us, it develops us. And convenience, when it becomes an idol, as I believe it has today, it robs us of our development. When my children were growing up, they made their own toys. They made their own fun. They had to use their imagination. Boredom was not an emergency in my house. Boredom was an opportunity. Now, today, the minute a child says, I'm bored, somebody feels like they have to hand them a screen or a tablet. I've seen that going out to dinner, a snack, a toy, a game, or some kind of entertainment. But boredom is not always bad, folks. Boredom forces creativity. Boredom forces problem solving. Boredom forces children to engage their minds. It forces them to look around and say, what can I make out of what I already have? And that is a skill, it's a muscle. And that muscle is what we call development. And so my children didn't fear what some people would call hard work or inconvenience, because they were allowed to be inconvenienced. They were allowed to figure things out. They were allowed to be bored, but they were also allowed to use that opportunity to develop their creative energy. They were allowed to not have everything handed to them immediately. And as a result, they have built resilience. But today, we have confused discomfort with neglect. We have confused inconvenience with harm. We've confused it with correction, with abuse. We've confused boredom with deprivation. But no, sometimes what we call deprivation is actually development. Sometimes what we call inconvenience is actually preparation. What we call hardship is actually training. A child who never has to wait becomes an adult who can't handle delay. You see it all the time now on people going into an outrage, into a fit because they don't get their cheeseburger on time. A child who doesn't not allowed to problem solve becomes an adult who panics when life get complicated. And a child who's constantly entertained is an adult who can't sit in silence. A child who never becomes or is told that there are boundaries thinks everything oppression. And then we wonder why people cannot cope with everyday life. Maybe the problem is not that life got harder. Maybe the problem is that we got less prepared. We also have become intellectually lethargic. And this is like one of my irritating things. We don't want to study. We want sound bites. We don't want to read. We want memes. We don't want to wrestle with complex ideas. We just want short videos. We don't want to research. We want somebody else to tell us what to think. And then we call ourselves, I'm informed. No, you are not informed because you watched a 30-second clip. A matter of fact, that's probably AI generated or manipulated in some way. You're not informed because someone made a catchy meme or because the algorithm keeps feeding you the same opinions over and over again. Information is not the same as wisdom. Exposure is not the same as understanding. And inconvenience has made us think that because information is easy to access now, wisdom should be easy to obtain. But wisdom, it still requires effort. It requires study, it requires reflection, and most importantly, it requires humility because you have to sit with something longer than your attention span wants to, right? And we have a lot of young people graduating college, university with degrees and still struggle to read, write, and comprehend and use critical thinking. We have people challenging basic realities because they've been trained to value ideology over observation. We have people who can repeat talking points, but they can't explain the principles behind what they believe. That's not education, that is programming. And one reason it has happened is because we have made thinking too inconvenient. Thinking takes time. Thinking requires quiet. I homeschooled my children, and one of my goals was not to have them memorize Abraham Lincoln's birthday or George Washington. It was critical thinking. And when I realized how much effort it takes to teach a child how to think critically, I now understood why schools don't do it, because it takes time. And guess what? Things that take time in our society now have been deemed inconvenient. And so thinking and critically thinking may force you to change your mind. It may even expose that you were wrong, God forbid. And a comfort addicted culture like we have doesn't want that. It wants affirmation. It doesn't want correction. It wants validation. It doesn't want truth. It wants convenience, not wisdom. And that's why we're seeing this decline and this depravity in our society, because we don't just want access to information. We have more access to information than any generation before us, but yet we are declining because we have lost the discipline to process the information rightly. All right, we are going to pause right here. And when we come back, I want to talk about how convenience has affected parenting, the church, our ability to deal with normal human suffering, because this is where it gets personal. And this is where we have to ask, did we make life better? Or did we make ourselves weaker? Let's take a break. Let's grab some water, stretch. And if you need to do that, then come on right back, because we are not done with this. Before we begin today's conversation, I want to remind you of something. You are not your worst mistake. Life will test you. People will disappoint you. None of those things have the authority to define who you are. Victimhood survives in darkness. Freedom grows in truth. Let's get ready to discuss the hard truth. Welcome back. Welcome back. So let's talk about parenting, shall we? Because this convenience issue is showing up now in families in a major way. And as you have probably have listened to previous episodes, you know that I am a survivor of childhood abuse at the hands of my father, right? So this whole trend of estrangement of adult children becoming estranged from their parents is really it's really rattling me up because you know you as a survivor of abuse, I wanted nothing more than my parents' acceptance and love. I did not look for ways to disappoint them. I did not look for ways to be separated from them. Yes, for a period, I had to be separated from my parents, but that wasn't my ultimate goal. I wanted to, at some point, for it to be safe enough for me to reconcile. Now, let me be clear. There are real cases where estrangement is necessary because there are abusive parents, like I shared with you. There are dangerous parents, like I shared with you. And there are toxic situations where distance is wise and even necessary, as I've shared with you. So I'm not talking about people who had to separate for safety, healing, or sanity. But when you are an adult, you have more control over your time, over your energy, over your environment, right? So it's not the same as a child who is at the mercy of the adults in their lives and their decisions. But I'm talking about this growing mindset that says if childhood was not perfect, then somebody must have done something wrong. If I felt any type of discomfort, then someone failed me, right? If my parents did not make my life easy enough, they damaged me. I'm hearing things like I had chores and boundaries and discipline and correction and disappointment and I was traumatized. No, that is where I believe that we have lost our way. And you may disagree, and that's fine. But that's why we're here, right? We're here to have a discussion. And so some adult children are angry because I believe that they're realizing that life is actually a lot harder now than they were led to believe. And they feel unprepared for this reality. I believe that is the root of this estrangement trend that we see. They feel slighted because they feel like they were unprepared for the realities of life. So here's the hard truth. In some cases, the problem may not be that their parents made life too hard for them. The problem may be that their parents made life too easy. And as my daughter said the other day, because we're getting ready to move. And I told her, I said, you're going to have to lose your TV for about 4 or 5 days. And I thought that she might be a little upset or whatever, but she wasn't. She said, oh, that's first world problems. Not worried about it. I can deal with it. Love it. Love it. The problem, again, is not that parents were too hard on the children. It's that they were probably too easy. And so the children were not inconvenienced enough to build resilience. They were not required to problem solve enough. They were not allowed to experience enough discomfort. I, I remember this concept. All of these principles are in nature. If you just sit and observe nature, even the Bible uses nature as a metaphor for how we are to conduct our lives. When a baby chick is in the shell, the worst thing that you can do is open the shell for the chick. You need to let the baby chick that's on the inside of the egg take its beak and beat itself out of and break itself free out of the egg, because that's how it builds the strength to live in the environment that is outside of the egg. So a lot of our children were protected from too much of the natural resistance that develops maturity. Think about the terminology that we've used, helicopter parent, right? That's all about you're trying to protect your kid and you want to make sure that everything goes right and that they have all the right equipment and have access to all the programs and yada yada yada, all the things that we have been, I believe, brainwashed to believe are necessary and required for to raise a healthy adult. And that's not it, folks. That's not it at all. So we have adults now, young adults that are angry at life because life is not cooperating with the fantasy that they were sold. Guess what? Life's got bills. It's got disappointments, right? You're going to lose a job. You're not going to have a boss that you like. You're going to have a mean coworker. You're going to have conflict. You're going to have unfairness. You're going to be rejected. Just watch on the news about this big debate about how come teens can't find a job today. I actually heard a mother on the news say, you know what? Back in the day, I just remember you filling out an application and you just knew that you would get a summer job. Hmm. I don't know that I heard that. I think you do have to make some effort besides just filling out the application. And as an employer, I actually know that there are a big segment of this current population and generation that cannot actually complete an application. Okay. So I digress. But rejection is part of it. Responsibility is part of it. Delays. The kid was on the news about, I don't hear back. Why? You want to hear back right after you fill out the application? Doesn't work like that, right? Life is work. Life has trade-offs. There are people online crying because they have to work 8 hours a day or more. They're like, I can't do it. I've been working since I was 12 years old. I've at times I have had 2 and 3 full-time jobs. Working is just not a thing for me. That is just what you have to do when it's necessary, right? My kids know that. My daughter now has 2 jobs. It's just a thing. Sometimes there's periods of life where you have to push hard to reach the goals that you have set out to accomplish. They're not going to come to you, folks. I think most of you agree that nothing was ever really handed to you unless you were a privileged child that grew up in a household that was wealthy and your parents could afford. But there are even wealthy people that don't even think that way. Donald Trump, regardless of what you might believe about him, I appreciate how he's raised his children. They are not spoiled brats. He made them earn everything. If they didn't go to college, they wouldn't inherit what they needed to inherit, right? So not everybody holds the same ideology just simply because they have money or don't have money. It's really a choice. Look at my past episode. It's the story that you choose to tell yourself. So let's go back to the topic because I can get sidetracked. So if you were never taught how to handle the trade offs, handles those things that, yes, are not comfortable or convenient, then life will feel like an attack. But life is not attacking you just because it requires something from you, just because it requires some effort. This is why we need to stop raising children for comfort and start raising them for capability. My children being young adults, and this is the first time that they're going out in the world and really doing their thing. This to me is one of the most exciting periods of raising a child because now I can see all the effort, all the resilience, all those muscles that I'm talking about that I built in them. I can see how it has impacted their life and how they're heads and shoulders above everybody. Everybody, every job that they go to, they instantly rise because the competition is so low now. So the danger with them is I have to tell them the competition is really low, but don't you get lazy. You still keep pushing yourself to expand and grow your capacity to excel and to live a life of excellence because it's going to be very tempting for them to lower the standards for themselves because the bar has been set so low. And I don't want that to happen to them because times will change. As my father used to say, the pendulum of time will shift backwards. What was old will become new again. So, although we see this decline, we're going to see a rise in children who are resilient. right? But we have to first set our goals differently. The goal of parenting is not to make childhood less painless. The goal is not to reduce pain and to reduce suffering, right? When your child falls down, scrapes his knee, please don't go over and say, "Oh my God, are you all right?" I don't do that. I'll say, "Hey, got to get back up." That probably I might kiss the boo boo, and daddy probably is not gonna kiss the boo boo. But the goal is to raise a capable adult, a resilient adult, a discerning adult, an emotionally mature adult, and a spiritually grounded adult. It's an adult who can handle inconvenience without falling apart. We have a world full of big babies because no matter how much you love your child, you can't remove every challenge from their life. I remember as my kids grew up, their problems, their challenges grew bigger along with them. My son in high school had a really bad accident where he could have killed another passenger that was in the car with him and as along with himself. Till this day, that weighs on his mind, but it's nothing that I could do about it but be there and try to help him navigate that situation, not in the natural, spiritually, and emotionally. And so if you try to remove every challenge, then you may be robbing your children of the very muscles that they actually need to survive this thing that we call life. Now let's get back and talk about the church because even in church, we want convenience. Oh, you guys know it. Lights, camera, action, smoke. And I'm all for it. I love a good program, just like anybody else. But I don't see my church experience as being one where I need to be entertained. I go for fellowship and to experience and encounter with the Lord. But today we have it your way gospel, and we have been on this trend for a few decades now. And we want parts of the Bible that bless us, comfort us, affirm us, encourage us, and make us feel good. And I fell, being a survivor of trauma, I fell into that, right? Because that was a hole in my heart. That was a wound. I just wanted to feel better. And so my initial decision to be drawn to church was because I wanted to feel good. I wanted to feel better. But eventually you have to mature beyond that, right? So a lot of us are still in that baby phase, right? We want to skip all the parts of the Bible and church that confront us. We want grace but not repentance, blessing but not obedience, purpose, no pruning. We want victory but no warfare. We want the promise, but we don't want to go through a process. We want resurrection, but not death to self. And so, even when a preacher or pastor or evangelist, whatever title they may hold, is just a child of God at the end of the day. When any of those people touches a topic that is inconvenient for the lifestyle of modern culture, we are quick to call it hate speech. Okay. And that's a warning, right? It's a warning to speak truth in a culture that loves to live in a deceptive life. And so, if the word challenges our behavior, we also say it's judgment. You can't judge me. Nobody can judge me but God. God has already judged you, right? So if I bring up to you what the Bible says, that's God's judgment concerning that situation right there. I didn't make that up. It's in the word of God, right? You have to be careful when you tell people not to judge you, because what are you really saying? If it's in the word, then it's already been judged, which is why Jesus came, right? To set you free from that judgment so that you would not have to experience that judgment. And so truth confronts a lot of our lifestyle choices today. And a lot of us are saying that that means you're intolerant. And when correction comes, we say, oh, they lack compassion. But biblical truth is not hate, right? And it's not hate just because it doesn't flatter your flesh or make you feel good about your current lifestyle choices that contradict the word of God. The gospel was never designed to be convenient. Think about it. The Bible tells us to love our enemy. and most of us can't even love our parents. So that is hard. You love your enemy? Wow. It says honor your parents. It doesn't give stipulations. You only love your enemy if they do XYZ, and you only honor your parents if they do XYZ. Those are hard truths. Very inconvenient when someone has hurt you, when you feel somebody has unjustly taken advantage of you. That's hard to love in spite of. What who would come up with that other than a all-knowing and loving and wise God? So the gospel was never designed to be convenient. It did not call people to comfort. It called people to follow Christ and to transform. He said to take up your cross, to deny yourself. He said you're going to have troubles. You're going to need to count the cost. That doesn't sound convenient to me, folks, but it is abundant. And that's where we need to make the distinction. The Bible does not paint the picture of a convenient life. It paints the picture of an abundant life, an overcoming life, a victorious life, a life empowered by God through Christ, a life where trials do not destroy you because Christ has already overcome the world. And that's different from convenience, because convenience says, make this easy for me, but faith says, strengthen me to walk through this. Convenience says, remove the mountain, but faith says, teach me how to climb, speak, endure, or move it according to your will, oh God. And so convenience says, I shouldn't have to suffer. Faith says, even suffering can serve a purpose when surrendered to God. And that is a hard truth for modern ears, because modern culture wants God, I say, to be a genie in the bottle. It wants God to be a comfort provider, not Lord, right? But Jesus is not a product. He is Lord. He's not a genie in a lamp. He's not Santa Claus, right? You don't write your list, check it twice, and then send it in to him and say, all right, do your thing, right? So if we're going to follow him, we cannot pick only the convenient parts of the word. Convenience can help you conserve energy. It can help you use resources more efficiently, help you save time, right? But it doesn't eliminate the need for effort. And that's where people can get deceived. A washing machine, the same thing. It saves time, but you still have to do the laundry, right? You still have to physically take your clothes, sort them out, put them in the laundry and turn the machine on. A dishwasher, the same thing. You still have to clean the kitchen, right? The dishwasher is simply there for you to load it up with dishes. And I know people that don't even want to do that. A GPS, it gives you direction, but you still got to drive the car. Autonomous vehicles have yet to be perfected to where we can just sit back and plug in the GPS and let it just take us on our way. A degree, you spent years of study, it can open a door. But when you get through that door, you still have to be able to demonstrate your competency to perform that job, that task. A sermon can inspire you, but you still have to obey. And a Bible app, it can send you a verse on your phone. I have them, but you still have to renew your mind, right? You still have to absorb that verse, meditate on that verse, and then decide how you will apply that verse in your everyday life. Convenience provides assistance. It does not provide character, because character is built through the resistance, like a muscle. A muscle grows through resistance. Faith grows through uncertainty. Wisdom grows through experience, and patience grows through delay, right? Discipline, it grows through consistency, and resilience grows through difficulty. You cannot microwave folks' maturity, and that's where a lot of us are struggling. We have never been given the opportunity to really mature in a way that we can navigate our life as adults. You can't DoorDash discipline. You can't download discernment or outsource obedience. Oh no, I don't want to do that. I'll let my buddy over here do that for me and I'll still get the credit. No. You can't shortcut character. And that's where we struggle because we want a convenient life, but we also want deep character. And it doesn't work that way. We want the ease and we want to have it easy, but we want to be strong. We want comfort, but we also want victory. We want to get we want to climb Mount Everest. Research that. I have researched the people that make the decision to climb Mount Everest. Do you know the level in the months and sometimes years of preparation that they have to go through to climb Mount Everest? I would say if you did the research, you would recognize that there is no level of comfort in preparing to climb Mount Everest, no matter which base camp you're going to go to. Because not, my understanding from my research is that there's different levels of base camp, and some people have a challenge to get to base camp one, and so and so and so, and then they develop and condition their bodies and minds even further to get to the summit. And the summit is where the ultimate victory is, right? Because you want to get to the top of that mountain. But most people don't make it there, right? So you can't avoid challenges and then still want to be an overcomer. It doesn't work like that. In order to be an overcomer, you have to overcome something, right? You can't get strong if nothing ever tests your strength. I look back at my life, and when I was going through the dark nights of the soul, as some people say, they like to call it did not feel good. It didn't feel good. So I'm not going to tell you, sit here and say, oh, just smile through it, because I didn't. But when I look back over my life and I look at the challenges that I face today and the challenges that are going to come in the future, you know what? I have a confidence that I can get through it. And that gives me a peace that surpasses all understanding. Why? Because I know that my spirit and mind have been tested and tried to be so that I could endure. I have been in a position where God has taken me through different seasons of life, different trials, different ups and downs. And so when things like COVID hit the earth, okay, just another test. I didn't panic. I actually had gone through my own personal season of COVID, which I didn't recognize it at the time until COVID hit the planet. And I said, oh my God, thank you, Lord, for taking me through that experience, because now I know what it's like. And now that COVID is here, guess what, folks? My business thrived. I thrived. I was a source, a resource to my community. When people were losing their jobs, I could employ them. I could help the people in my community get resources, not be afraid, act with a clear and sober mind, not be emotional and be all over the place, not taking in all of the negativity and the despair of watching them. The news had all the dead bodies being piled up. None of that stuff fazed me. Didn't faze me one bit. Not one bit. Not I can't even lie about it. I was just looking at everybody like, you're not going to go to church. You're not. Wait a minute. What happened to your faith? What happened to your faith? I sat there and I listened to pastors say, if you don't get the vaccine, you can't come to church. And I'm saying to myself, okay, all right, help me to understand. But anyway, I could go on for days about that whole shenanigans. But you can't develop courage if there is never anything for you to face. You can't develop resilience if there is never any inconvenience removed from your life. So maybe the inconvenience is not there to destroy you. I know it feels like it when you're going through it. Trust me, I know that it feels like you are just going to die under the weight and the pressure of the inconvenience. But I want to assure you that it will not kill you. It is there to develop you. And when you hit your next crisis or your next trial, if you allow the current inconveniences to strengthen you, what you're going to find is that you can stand steady and strong when the next battle comes up on the scene. And you're going to be so appreciative that you went through what you went through, because your confidence, it grows. I've been through so much stuff that life really doesn't phase me like it used to. I remember being a young woman, newly married, and bill collectors were calling me on the phone. And I actually was in tears, because those bill collectors, they know how they can get somebody that they know doesn't know the laws and all that stuff. And I'm like, I can't pay it. I'm crying. And my husband, who's a lot older than me, he said, you know, you can hang up. And I said, oh, yeah, I can. Okay. I just didn't know any better, right? But once he shared that wisdom with me, that I was in control of the situation, why was I allowing a situation or a circumstance to control me when I was in control, right? So you have to go through things to gain wisdom, to gain clarity, to gain understanding about how to govern the affairs of life and how to properly deal with the situations and trials that are inevitably going to come your way. So I believe that we now look at ourselves, as I mentioned in a previous episode about being victims. We're actually victims of too much convenience, right? So not because convenience itself is bad, but because we forgot what the true human experience looks like and what it feels like. The human experience includes work, waiting, pain, uncertainty, struggle, learning, failure, rebuilding, disappointment, responsibility. It includes suffering, all of those dirty words that we don't like to hear. And if your expectation is that life should be easy, then normal life situations and trials will feel unbearable. Again, look at the news, look at social media. You've got people going into McDonald's fighting the managers and the employees and throwing cups, and because their burger wasn't made right or whatever, their order was wrong. This is why perception matters. This is why the story you tell yourself matters, because some of our suffering is not just what happened. Some of our suffering is how we have chosen to interpret what happened. If I believe life should never be hard, then every hard thing feels like an injustice. I didn't get the job because I was black. I didn't get the job because I was short. I didn't get the job because I didn't have long hair. I didn't have big boobs or whatever. You could come up with a million and one reasons why you didn't get the job. And your whole thing is life is unfair, this is an injustice, let me get a poster, and instead of looking for that next job, let me get a poster and let me go down to the corner and protest the injustice that just happened to me. Waste of time, folks, waste of time. You could have took that energy to go hustle and apply to a different job. And so if you believe that you should never be uncomfortable, then yes, every discomfort feels like a traumatic experience. It feels like the end of the world. If people believe they should always affirm, people should always affirm me, then yeah, when anytime somebody corrects me, feels like hatred. I remember watching one of my fellow content creators, older woman, I believe she's over 60, and she kind of caters to that age group. But I love all things aging. I follow her, and she mentioned that she answered the question. A lot of young people are online saying, where's the village? How come the village won't help me raise my children? And her response was, the village stopped talking when we were told, you can't talk to my child like that. You have to affirm them. You can't correct my child. We want to know where the village went. The village went quiet because they were not well received. So if you believe that God should prevent every painful thing, then every time you have a trial, it becomes a reason to doubt him. You see the pattern here? But if you understand that life includes trials and tribulations, then you won't fall apart every time trouble comes. You may cry, you may grieve, you may wrestle with the situation, you may need help, right? You may have to reach out, you may need prayer, but you don't have to collapse into resentment because your expectation is different. Jesus told us trouble would come, but he also told us to take heart because he has already overcome the world. And that means the presence of trouble does not cancel the presence of God. That means difficulty is not proof that you are abandoned. That means inconvenience is not proof that something is wrong. Sometimes inconvenience is part of the journey. Resistance is part of the strengthening. Delay is part of the development. Sometimes the hard thing is the thing that prepares you for the next thing. This is one powerful truth that blew me away when my business grew and I had more employees and I had to navigate all types of economic downturns and crisis in society. I thought about it. I said, could the 20 something year old me, without all the experience between that point and now, would I have been prepared? And the answer was no. I thought I was. I did. I always had big goals and big vision and dreams, but I was ill prepared and ill equipped, and I didn't know it because of my ignorance, because I had no idea what would be required of me to lead people through crisis and change when the world seemed to be falling apart. Everybody wants a leader that is stable, right? You need somebody that's a pillar. You don't want somebody that's on shaky ground themselves. You already shaken. So you need a leader that can stand strong in the midst of adversity. But guess what? How did I become that? Not overnight, folks. Not overnight. It was a process. It was a series of one trial after another trial hitting my life over and over again. And me being like on a racetrack and jumping over the barrier there. I forget what it escapes me, but you guys know when they're on that field, the track stars, the hurdles, and they jump those hurdles. You know how much practice they had to go to, child. I be to knock all them hurdles all the way down, all the way down the field, right? Without any training. But if I was properly trained, it would be different. So what do? We have to start practicing inconvenience again. Yes, I said practicing because this handy dandy phone here has caused us to practice convenience too much. So let yourself be bored. Read a full chapter of a book instead of watching a 30-second clip. Cook a meal instead of ordering out. Walk instead of driving when you can. Call someone instead of texting. Sit in silence instead of filling every moment with noise. Study an issue before reposting an opinion. I do this all the time. Something strikes me as being correct or wise, but then I pause and I say, wait a minute, let me look into that to see if there's any relevant information that actually supports that this is the best way to look at this situation. Let your children solve some problems before you jump in to rescue them. If they're tying their shoes, it might take a few extra minutes, but let them fiddle with it. If you know that they can do it and they've learned the steps and the skill, let them practice that. Let them be bored. Stop going out wasting money buying all these toys that actually end up in a landfill somewhere. You know how many? The reason I didn't buy toys is not because I didn't think my children deserve toys or that I didn't have the money to buy them, but I would go to people's homes that had small children throughout my life. And what would I see? This big room full of toys that weren't played with. And then watching the parents gather them up after so much time because it starts to clutter and then throwing them in the garbage. I was counting like how much money was that? If that was $10 a toy, my God, that's a down payment on a house, that's a car, that could put that in the children's college fund, what have you. So let them be bored. Let them be corrected. We got kids out here just having temper tantrums. That is what all of this take over culture stuff is about. That's what all of this rioting and protest is about. It is people and children that are not mature. They're having a tantrum. because they don't have a constructive way. They don't know of a constructive way of how to direct their energy to actually bring about the change that they want to see. So they just scream out loud like a child, falling on the floor, kicking and screaming and having a tantrum. So let your children be bored. Let them get used for you be correcting them, and then stand strong. Don't sit there and waffle back and forth because they pout or you feel guilty. Why? Why you feel guilty? You should actually feel guilty for not correcting your child because you're or not making them wait or not making them work. My children have been working. I asked my husband, we were watching that news program about the teens can't find work. And I looked at my husband, I said, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. My children, both of my children have been working for years. Even before they went to high school, they were working. They've always had a job, whether they were self-employed or they went out and got a job in the marketplace, right? They knew how to work. They knew how to fail. So when you let them do these things, it builds muscles that they're going to need later. And adults, we have to do the same thing. We have to stop running from hard conversation. We have to stop calling everything trauma. We have to stop outsourcing our thinking and blaming everybody in our life instead of taking responsibility. Stop expecting the world and life to be painless, and stop treating inconvenience like an enemy, because convenience may save time, but it cannot save your soul. It may make things easier, but it cannot make you mature. It's going to remove convenience, can remove friction, but it cannot produce character, right? And so if we remove every challenge, then we remove the opportunity to grow. So here's the question I want you to sit with today. Has convenience helped you live better, or has it made you weaker? Has it helped you steward your life more wisely, or has it made you passive, lazy, entitled, and resentful? Has it freed up time for purpose, or has it created more space for distraction? Because convenience is only a tool. It was never meant to become an idol. It was never meant to replace discipline or suffering or remove effort. It was never meant to make us passive. Life will always have challenges, no matter the conveniences that we have in place. So the question is not whether the challenges will come. The question is whether you will have the strength, the wisdom, the discipline, the faith, and the resilience to navigate them well. And here is the good news. Through Christ, we can overcome. Not because life is easy, not because the suffering is just going to magically disappear, and not because the world becomes more convenient, but because Jesus overcame the world. And through him, we are empowered to overcome too. The Bible does not promise a convenient life. It promises an abundant life, a life of victory, a life full of purpose, a life of endurance, a life where God can use even the uncomfortable places to make us stronger, to make us wiser, deeper, and more fruitful. So maybe the goal is not to make life easier. Maybe the goal is to become stronger. Maybe the goal should be to not remove every inconvenience. Maybe the goal is to learn how to grow through it. So maybe the hard truth about convenience is this: too much convenience can make you forget what you were created to overcome. This is Hard Truth, real talk for real growth. Be kind, keep it classy, and I'll see you in those comments. Bye-bye.